Bonjour à toutes et à tous et merci de nous joindre dans la salle de presse virtuelle de la Commission européenne et merci de nous regarder également en direct sur Europe by Satellite. Nous sommes le lundi 31 août. Nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire avant de passer à vos éventuelles questions. Je voudrais commencer avec l'agenda de la présidente von der Leyen pour cette semaine. Ce mercredi, la présidente présidera le séminaire de rentrée du Collège des commissaires. Ils se réuniront pour discuter de l'agenda politique de cette rentrée. Enfin, jeudi, la présidente recevra les représentants permanents des États membres pour un déjeuner du travail. Permettez-moi maintenant de passer la parole à Viviane pour une annonce concernant la contribution de la Commission à la facilité COVAX sous le Coronavirus Global Response. Viviane.
Merci beaucoup, Dana. And good afternoon. Today, the European Commission has confirmed its interest to participate in the COVAX facility for equitable access to affordable coronavirus vaccines everywhere for everyone who needs them. As part of the effort by Team Europe, the Commission has also today announced a contribution of 400 million euros in guarantees to support COVAX and its objectives in the context of the coronavirus global response. For your context, in May, the Commission proposed a cooperation framework to align global efforts and accelerate progress in developing coronavirus vaccines, therapeutics and diagnostics, and strengthen our health systems. This is done by delivering new tools and solutions from research to manufacturing and deployment. And COVAX is the vaccines pillar of this work, co-led by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and the World Health Organization. The aim of COVAX is to accelerate the development and manufacture of a coronavirus vaccine and to guarantee fair and equitable access for every country in the world. The Commission's participation in COVAX will be complementary to the ongoing negotiations we're having with vaccine companies that aim at scaling up manufacturing capacity of vaccine producers and contributing to global efforts. The European Commission remains committed to ensuring that everyone who needs a vaccine gets it anywhere in the world, because no one will be safe until everyone is safe. This is why we immediately responded to the call for action by the World Health Organization, and we have raised almost 16 billion euros since May under the coronavirus global response, the global action for universal access to tests, treatments, and vaccines against coronavirus, and for the global recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viviane. I will now invite Sonia to join me to provide you information about new rules on cars entering into application today.
Good afternoon. Tomorrow, the new EU regulation on the approval and market surveillance of motor vehicles will start to apply. Adopted in May 2018, the new regulation significantly overhauls and tightens the previous type approval and market surveillance system. It improves the quality and independence of vehicle type approval and testing, increases checks of cars already on the EU market, and strengthens the overall system with greater European oversight. The key elements of the new EU rules are independence and quality of testing before a car is placed on the market, as well as checks on cars already on the market. In addition, the Commission is now able to carry out compliance and conformity checks on vehicles in laboratories and on the road. From now on, the Commission will be also able to trigger EU-wide recalls and impose fines of up to 30,000 euro per car when the law is broken. These reforms complement the Commission's work on safer and cleaner mobility, which in the challenging times of coronavirus crisis require even more future-oriented investment in infrastructure and innovation. For more information on this subject, please check out our press release and also the question and answers we have just published, Also, a technical briefing on the matter will take place immediately after the midday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. I will now invite Balázs to provide you information on humanitarian aid from the European Union to Lebanon. Balázs.
Bonjour. Donc, effectivement, j'ai des nouvelles sur un pont aérien humanitaire pour le Liban. Aujourd'hui, un deuxième vol organisé par l'Union européenne va atterrir à Beyrouth, livrant 12 tonnes de fournitures humanitaires et d'équipements médicaux, y compris un hôpital mobile et des masques. Le matériel livré aujourd'hui permettra de répondre aux besoins médicaux des plus vulnérables suite à l'exposition à Beyrouth et à lutter contre la pandémie de coronavirus. C'est donc le deuxième vol humanitaire organisé par l'Union européenne vers le Liban suite à la tragédie de Beyrouth. Le premier est arrivé le 13 août avec à son bord plus de 17 tonnes de fournitures humanitaires, de médicaments et de matériel médical. Nous restons bien sûr prêts à apporter davantage d'aide essentielle au Liban aux besoins.
Merci beaucoup, Balázs. Voilà ce qui clôture nos annonces pour vous pour aujourd'hui. Nous sommes désormais prêts à répondre à vos questions. So please raise your hand if you wish to ask a question. And I see that Athanasios is interested in asking a question. Athanasios, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Bonjour, maybe for Peter. And I would like someone to update us on the telephone call between the High Representative and the Foreign Affairs Minister of Turkey, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, held some hours ago. What did they talk about? How did the Turkish side see the results of the Gimnik Council on Friday? And how do we move on from now and from here? Thanks.
Thank you, Athanasios. Peter promptly joined me. Peter, go ahead.
Hi, Athanasios. Thank you very much. I will try to answer those questions which are for the EU to answer. So I will not be answering on how the Turkish side is assessing the results of the informal ministerial meeting in Berlin. I can confirm that High Representative Josep Borrell spoke to the Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. This is part of their ongoing conversations. You know that in the past they had both phone calls and personal meetings, and this is the way how the HRVP proceeds. In order to maintain the dialogue with Turkey. On this particular occasion, the main reason for the phone call was to debrief essentially the Turkish partner about the outcome and the discussions of the foreign ministers of the EU on the relations between the EU and Turkey and on the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, in line with the messages which were shared with the public on Friday after the informal meeting by the foreign ministers. So the Turkish side was informed both publicly through the messaging from the Gimnik and then also directly and personally by the HRVP about the EU's expectations from Turkey in order to find solution, peaceful and calm solution to the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean and how the EU sees the way towards de-escalation and measures which the EU is ready to take and is already taking in order to react to Turkish behavior, which is, as the ministers have clearly stated, source of concern for the whole EU.
Thank you, Peter. I will now invite you to raise your hand if you have additional questions to Peter on this very subject, which was discussed at the Gimnik. So on Turkey. So I understand that Sarah has a question for Peter on the subject. If that's the case, go ahead. But I understand that, yes, Athanasios has a follow-up. So Athanasios first.
Thanks again. Since you mentioned the expectations of the European side, there are also expectations from the Turkish side. And that question was posed also to the High Representative on Friday, but the answer was not that clear. The Turkish side wants to discuss other issues together, bundled together with the issue of the limitation of maritime zones with Greece. There are things that they think that they want to discuss together with the maritime zones. So could that be the issue, or are you in favor of a monothematic discussion only on the maritime zones in the Eastern Mediterranean and nothing else on the negotiation table? Thank you.
Well, the bottom line is to have the dialogue going instead of unilateral actions which increase the tensions in the area among the neighbors and among the EU and Turkey as such. The ministers were very clear that they want to find a path towards a healthier relationship between the EU and Turkey and give a serious chance to dialogue. So at this stage, I wouldn't go into speculation on the agenda of the dialogue, but into the fact that it is essential to stop unilateral actions. It is essential to stop exchanges of messages through the media and declarations and statements, which we are witnessing right now between Turkey and Greece, for example. But it is essential to go into the dialogue, into a serious, honest dialogue, tackling all the open issues, because only in the dialogue and in negotiations you can pursue the escalation and the path towards stability and lasting solutions, which are so necessary in our relations, both as a neighbors of Turkey and as a partners of Turkey, and that concerns the individual member states and the EU as a whole.
Thank you, Peter. The next question will be for Sarantis. Sarantis, please go ahead.
Good morning from me as well. It's clear you have been pushing for dialogue between Greece and Turkey. Ankara has a casus belli warning on the table against Greece. Do you believe that there can be a dialogue with casus belli on the table?
As I mentioned, we don't see it very productive to comment on the public declarations and statements on exchanges of words, very strong words and unfortunate words, of course. But the ministers were very clear, the foreign ministers of the EU member states are very clear in their discussions and in their conclusions, informal conclusions, of course, not conclusions adopted in writing, but the conclusions as a summary of the meeting, that what we expect from Turkey. The ministers were very clear and determined to show EU solidarity with its two affected member states, namely Cyprus and Greece, and they were very clear in their call on Turkish authorities to end any unilateral activities which are escalating tensions in the Mediterranean, and the ministers and the EU are very clear in preferring dialogue instead of a confrontation. And this is the way which should be pursued, the dialogue as a way to de-escalation. And if it's not possible to have the dialogue, if there is no de-escalation, the EU has launched already steps how to react to situation when there is no change in this behavior, and take appropriate measures. And they were already outlined after the discussions by the ministers.
Thank you, Peter. I understand that Maria has a question for Peter as well, and I presume it's on the same topic. If that's the case, Maria, go ahead. Maria, are you connected? Do we have Maria on the line? She should be on the line, but you just need to press the button speak for us to hear you. Yes.
I did. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, we can see you. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I was telling that it's just a quick follow-up. If you do you see any more moves on the diplomatic side? Are there any specific steps ahead and ahead of the European Council in September? Thank you.
Well, of course, the diplomacy needs to take its course, and the call between the HRVP or the call by the HRVP with the Turkish counterpart is one expression of it, how the dialogue continues and how the HRVP sees his space for trying to contribute to finding the solutions. So, of course, I mean, dialogue or the efforts and the outreach towards the Turkish partners will continue, as was the case also until now. It's very clear what are the expectations from the EU side, and what are the timelines, as well as stressed by the foreign ministers in Berlin last Friday and Thursday and Friday. So the diplomacy takes its course, and the exchanges are continuing and will be continuing, hopefully towards a productive dialogue on the escalation in the Eastern Mediterranean and on all the open issues which are source of frictions between EU and Turkey in our complex and currently very difficult relationship.
Thank you, Peter. I will now invite you to indicate by raising your hand if you have any additional questions for Peter on this subject. I understand that Mose has a question for Peter on this. Mose, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello. Hello, Dana. Thank you. Yes, I would also like to take the opportunity to ask Peter about a related question about EU diplomacy. and the outcome of the Gymnich meeting last week in Berlin. And it doesn't concern Turkey, but it concerns, let's say, the opening of relations or normalization between Israel and one of the Gulf states, United Arab Emirates. I think I saw that the Israeli Foreign Minister Ashkenazi also visited the Gymnich meeting and met their foreign ministers and High Representative Borrell. And the question now is whether this is a kind of momentum also to try to restart, let's say, I mean, the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which has been stalled for so long time. What is his opinion about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. Indeed, the foreign minister of Israel was guest at the lunch with the foreign ministers in Berlin. They were discussing all the issues related to the Middle East. And the EU has been very vocal for a very long time that we are strongly in favor of resuming and restarting, relaunching the Middle Eastern peace process, because this is the only viable way how to diffuse tensions in this part of the world, how to find solutions to all the open issues, ongoing open issues. And the simple and short answer to your question is, yes, we are strongly in favor of relaunching the Israeli-Palestinian talks on the Middle Eastern peace process. And yes, there is momentum for this. The momentum was actually already created at the start of the year with the announcement of the US plan. So, which we said that although it departed from internationally recognized parameters important for the EU, could at least serve as a momentum to restart the talks, because the direct talks and negotiations between the two parties and two sides are the only way to solve this ongoing problem.
Thank you very much, Peter. I understand that Nureddin has a question for Peter as well. So, Nureddin, please go ahead.
Good morning, Dana. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
All good.
I have a question to Peter regarding the issue raised by the Foreign Affairs Minister of Germany this morning in Paris. He spoke about the proposal agreed by France, Germany, Italy to sanction those who violate the arms embargo to Libya. Is the proposal being considered now by the Commission services, or it will be? Second, will the proposal target all those who are violating or violate the arms embargo? Because we have state actor and non-state actor who are violating the arms embargo according to UN reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Nureddin. Indeed, the European Union is actually the only actor who is trying to enforce the UN arms embargo through our operation Irini. And this is concrete contribution and concrete sign of the EU, how we want to contribute to solving the problem and the crisis in Libya. When it comes to suggestion for further sanctions and restrictive measures against those who are not complying and who are in breach of the UN arms embargo, the proposals from individual member states are something that is being discussed in the appropriate working groups, working formations of the Council. So it's not up to me to provide commentary on ongoing processes, but once the process is completed and the consensus of all the EU member states is found, then the new listings can be made, but this is a general practice with all the sanctions and all the restrictive measures. So on your specific question, I wouldn't go into the details, because all the proposals, especially from the member states, are part of the ongoing discussion in the Council.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will now invite you to ask additional questions on this specific subject, on Libya, if you have any. No, that doesn't seem to be the case. So then additional questions for Peter, if you are interested in other subjects. And yes, I see that Krzysztof would like to ask you a question. Krzysztof, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Peter. The Lithuanian president announced that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia will impose travel sanctions on representative of the Belarusian government. I was wondering whether you could update us where we are with the EU sanction list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krzysztof. High Representative on Friday, after the discussions of the foreign ministers in Berlin, said very clearly that there was agreement, there was a political green light for the formations of the Council for the working groups to start on the sanctions regime and on the listings of all those who we find responsible for the brutal repression of peaceful protesters and all the other limitations and the booked elections in Belarus. So this process has been started with the green light, with the political green light. And what was very clear also from the ministers' discussions in Berlin was that we won't see this process to go ahead and conclude as fast as possible. So the work has started, and we hope to see the results very soon.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any additional questions on this subject in relation to Belarus that Peter could answer? So please keep your hand raised if you have questions on this matter. No, I don't see any such questions at this stage. So then, are there any additional questions for Peter today on other matters that he covers? I see that Nawab is interested in asking a question, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Peter, I have a question on events which were held in Sweden last Friday where the Quran was burnt publicly. A similar event was held in Norway on Saturday. And of course, these were followed by protest demonstrations. So what is your reaction to this? Thank you.
Hi, Nawab. I'm afraid I'm not really in a position to comment on events in our member states. For that, we have other colleagues, so I would defer this question to my colleagues.
Thank you, Peter. I now see that Anna wishes to ask a question on foreign affairs matters. So, Anna, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I have a question on human rights in Russia, because yesterday evening, a journalist of Novaya Gazeta, his name is Yegor Zhukov, was beaten to pulp by unknown. It's not a first incident of intimidation of Russian press. And my question to Peter is, if a human rights dialogue with Russia is going on, is it ongoing? What are the formats now? Do you have consultations? And would you raise the question of problems with freedom of press, intimidation of press in Russia in the nearest future?
Thank you, Anna. Indeed, what happened to Yegor Zhukov is really regrettable. We wish him, of course, speedy recovery, and we expect that those responsible for this brutal and cowardly attack will be brought to justice as soon as possible. On your question, the European Union has on many occasions asked and proposed to Russian counterparts the resumption of the EU-Russia human rights consultations, but unfortunately Russia has not accepted that. They didn't accept to restart these consultations on the human rights until the EU restores the high-level political dialogue with Russia. And this is not possible because the high-level political dialogue was suspended as EU's reaction to the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014. And since Russia is linking these two issues together, unfortunately, despite our numerous efforts, they didn't respond favorably to restarting these consultations, which are overdue because the trend of there is a very negative trend in the human rights in Russia. And we are witnessing incidents of, when it comes to specifically to the media, we are witnessing incidents of intimidation, threats, violence against journalists or bloggers or people who are expressing their views which are not in line with the official views. And this is a very negative trend, and we are raising this, we are pointing out to this. This is very regrettable, and we are recalling that freedom of media, freedom of information belongs to the basic principles of a democratic society. And we expect that the Russian Federation will uphold its international and domestic obligations in this field and ensure that the journalists are able to work in a safe environment without the threats of such attacks as happened to Mr. Zhukov, but also without the threats of intimidation from the authorities and charges brought against them based on what they write or what they say. So indeed, the trend is very negative, and unfortunately, there is no platform to discuss this with the Russian counterparts because they refused our efforts to restart the human rights consultations.
Thank you, Peter. I will now invite you to signal your intention to ask additional questions on foreign affairs matters, since we have Peter here. So please raise your hand if you have foreign affairs related questions. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case, so thank you very much, Peter. Please now indicate your intention to ask questions about other measures, and indeed, I see an interest from David Carrera. So, David.
Oui, bonjour Dana. J'aurais deux questions liées, une à Schengen, l'annonce de l'Hongrie, l'autre la situation migrante dans la Méditerranée. Donc, je ne sais pas qui est compétent, si Adalbert est retourné. Première question donc sur l'Hongrie, pour faire thématique. Je voulais savoir si le gouvernement hongrois a consulté, a informé la commission de la décision de fermer les frontières à partir de demain. Je voulais savoir si vous avez une réaction et si vous pensez que cela va dans la lettre et l'esprit de la coopération qui était promis par les États membres quand on a réouvert Schengen au mois de juin-juillet. Merci.
Merci David. Adalbert va t'apporter ces réponses.
Bonjour David. Donc, pour ta question spécifique sur la Hongrie, pour l'instant, nous devons encore examiner les mesures annoncées par la Hongrie plus en détail. Nous n'avons pour l'instant pas connaissance d'une notification spécifique concernant les contrôles aux frontières.
Merci Adalbert. Je vous invite désormais de poser... Oui,
je peux avoir
David, bien sûr, follow-up.
Je reste sur le thème Hongrie, après si personne n'a d'autre, j'aurai la question migration, toujours pour Adalbert. Mais sur la Hongrie, est-ce qu'il y a eu une consultation avec vous? Et deuxième question, plus politique, disons. Il y avait une promesse de coopérer, etc., pour rouvrir Schengen. Est-ce que vous pensez que fermer les frontières, c'est la coopération? Merci.
Merci David. Donc, comme tu le sais, nous avons des réunions ou des visioconférences régulières avec les États membres, notamment avec les autorités qui s'occupent de contrôle aux frontières. La dernière de ces réunions a eu lieu vendredi dernier et effectivement, à cette réunion, la Hongrie n'a pas fait état de nouvelles mesures que la Hongrie compterait prendre. Pour ce qui est des restrictions à la libre circulation et des contrôles aux frontières, je pense que la position de la Commission est relativement claire et constante. Nous avons exprimé déjà en juin notre position que les contrôles aux frontières en tant que tels ne sont pas, selon les informations dont nous disposons et selon aussi les conseils des agences européennes, notamment du ECDC, ne sont pas une mesure efficace dans le contexte de cette pandémie. Ceci dit, nous continuons à coordonner, échanger avec les États membres et leur fournir des orientations sur les démarches à suivre. Et comme nous avons déjà communiqué là-dessus, nous avons notamment envoyé une lettre aux États membres le 7 août et nous travaillons avec les États membres sur la poursuite du travail sur cette question.
Merci beaucoup Adalbert. Je vous invite désormais à signaler votre intention de poser d'autres questions à Adalbert sur des sujets Schengen. Donc, si cela est le cas, gardez votre main levée dans les systèmes. Et je vois que Chandor a une question à ce sujet pour Adalbert. Chandor, vas-y.
Hi, yes, it's on the same matter on Hungary. Hungary is seeing now the whole of Europe as a red zone, and only Hungary considers as a green zone in the pandemic. Do you have any specific comment on this? Do you think that this Hungarian measurement on the pandemic situation in Europe is justified?
Thank you for your question, Chandor. This is not specifically a question for Adalbert, and apologies for making that distinction, but Adalbert will be answering questions regarding Schengen or border measures. So I will invite at a later stage Vivian to answer this question, which is more linked to the evolution of coronavirus and measures in relation to it. So we take note. Vivian will answer briefly, shortly. And until then, I invite colleagues to ask additional questions to Adalbert if they have any on Schengen-related matters or on migration-related matters, which he covers as well. I understand that Isabelle has a question for Adalbert. Isabelle, go ahead.
Bonjour. Alors du coup, je ne sais pas si ma question est pour Adalbert ou pour Viviane. La France annonce qu'elle prépare une initiative avec la présidence allemande et d'autres pays pour essayer d'harmoniser en fait ce qui constituerait des zones rouges ou des zones vertes et les mesures qui vont avec, c'est-à-dire les quarantaines, etc. Comme on a pu voir la Belgique le faire pour la France, de faire que ça soit fait de façon harmonisée, qu'on élabore des critères commun là-dessus. Je voulais savoir si vous étiez impliqué dans cette initiative, comment elle s'intégrait avec vos efforts et voilà, jusqu'à présent, ça n'a pas du tout marché, ces efforts de coordination. Donc, qu'est-ce qui pourrait faire que ça change maintenant?
Merci beaucoup Isabelle. Ta question a plusieurs angles. Il y a donc l'angle, si tu veux, coronavirus. Donc à partir de quel moment on peut, en fonction de l'évolution de la situation épidémiologique, à partir de quel moment on peut considérer que un set de mesures devrait s'appliquer à une région ou l'autre. Et il y a aussi un côté libre circulation. Donc à ce stade, je vais tout simplement te dire que Viviane, quand elle va monter sur scène dans un moment, va répondre à cette question aussi. Et je donne maintenant la dernière chance à des collègues à poser des questions à Adalbert, puisqu'il est sur scène au sujet Schengen ou migration. Est-ce qu'il y a encore des questions pour Adalbert à ce sujet? Je pense que David veut poser une question à Adalbert. David.
Oui, merci. C'est donc à propos de la situation dans la Méditerranée. On a vu la semaine passée, pendant le week-end, de nouvelles, accidents avec des États membres qui ne veulent pas intervenir, en particulier Malte et Italie, quand il y a des personnes en danger sur des bateaux, des ONG, mais pas seulement, il y a des gens qui sont bloqués sur un cargo à Malte à nouveau. Donc, je voulais savoir si vous avez une réaction par rapport à tout ça. Et est-ce qu'il y a des nouveautés par rapport au pacte sur la migration qui était annoncé pour juste après la rentrée? Merci.
Merci David. Donc, pour ce qui est de la situation en Méditerranée centrale, c'est une situation que nous suivons de très près. Une fois que des personnes ont été secourues, elles doivent être désembarquées rapidement pour s'assurer de leur sécurité ainsi que de la sécurité du vaisseau qui les a secourues et de son équipage. Nous appelons les États membres à collaborer à cette fin de manière urgente dans un esprit de solidarité et de responsabilité collective pour la gestion des migrations en Europe. Et je peux rappeler que les États côtiers, les États membres côtiers ont des responsabilités essentielles, mais ils ne doivent pas être laissés seuls par les autres États membres face à ces responsabilités, ainsi que dans la prise en charge des personnes qui ont été secourues, considérant également les défis considérables additionnels qui sont actuellement là à cause du coronavirus. En tant que Commission, nous demeurons en contact très étroit avec les États membres pour faciliter leurs échanges. La Commission, par ailleurs, continue à faire notre possible pour coordonner et faciliter la relocalisation, le fait de trouver des solutions de relocalisation après la désembarcation. Et nous sommes également prêts à fournir aux États membres où les personnes sont désembarquées à la fois un soutien financier et du soutien opérationnel à travers les agences de l'Union.
Merci Adalbert. I will invite you now to ask additional questions to Adalbert if you have any interest in this topic today. I understand that Maria wishes to ask a question to Adalbert. Maria, go ahead. Maria, are you there? I understand that can be a problem. There may be a problem with your microphone, so if you can try to select the right source, I'm told. So this doesn't seem to work. I will therefore give the floor now to Patricia, who is also interested in asking a question to Adalbert. So Patricia, go ahead, and in the meantime, Maria will sort out her connection problem. Patricia.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning to everybody. I would like to understand if Commission has been officially invested by a request from a member state to start relocation for these 400 migrants that have been rescued and have been on board NGO boats and a petrol boat by Maersk for a while now. So have you been invested? Do you have some response for us? And also, are you following what is happening in Lampedusa right now? Are you aware that the president of the Sicily region has asked the central government to evacuate the hotspots, and there is a fight, an interinstitutional fight, let's call it, on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Quite a few questions. So regarding the requests for coordination, so far we have not received a request to coordinate the relocation of those rescued by the Sea-Watch 4 and by the Louise Michel vessels. As ever, we stand ready to coordinate relocation efforts, and we remain in very close contact with member states. We have received a request to coordinate relocation of the people on board the Maersk Etienne boat, and the contacts with member states are ongoing. Now, regarding your question about the actions by the governor of Sicily, we are of course following the situation very closely, and we remain in close contact with the Italian government. However, questions relating to the legitimacy of a specific ordinance in the national legal system are more for the national authorities to comment. From our side, we can only maybe recall that any actions that are taken need to be, of course, in full respect of obligations under the EU asylum law and international obligations. And I can maybe also recall that the Commission is working very closely with the Italian government on migration issues, and recalling here a trip of Commissioner Johansson with Italian ministers Lamorgese and Di Maio to Tunisia earlier this month in order to discuss economic support to Tunisia and to address irregular migration and smuggling networks, which agreed in particular that there would be a technical group set up to take concrete steps to address these issues as soon as possible. And of course, the Commission continues to provide a very significant operational and financial assistance to Italy.
Thank you, Adalbert. I will now invite you to ask additional questions on this topic, on migration. So please raise your hand if you would wish to ask questions about this today. No, that doesn't seem to be the case, so thank you, Adalbert. And I will now invite Vivian to answer two questions regarding the situation on coronavirus in response to Chandra's question.
Thank you very much. Well, when it comes to the travel restrictions by the member states, then of course it is a national competence to set the quarantine levels and so on. But what we aim from the EU side is to work on its coordination. We are working through the EU Health Security Committee to make sure that there is coordination of health measures. And we also have in place the obligation to the member states to notify each other of these measures through the EU early warning and response system. So that's where we are at the moment, that we ask the member states to coordinate. We have put in place all the levels for that. We have the Health Security Committee, we have the early warning and response system. We have the advice by the ECDC which they give to member states on the situation, on the epidemiological situation in the country, and so on. In July, the Commission published also the communication where we explained our approach to future COVID outbreaks. And there, which we underlined very much, is the need to replace blanket restrictions to free movement by more targeted measures, which are limited in time or in geographical scope. And meaning, for example, that you apply certain restrictions to visitors from specific areas only. And this approach, which we put forward in July, it also emphasized very much the need to have no discrimination. Any restrictions that the member states put in place as regards the free movement should only be based on public health considerations and not on nationality. And we continue to work with the member states to make sure that there is this coordination and that on how we implement this approach, including through regular meetings at ministerial as well as technical levels. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I understand from his hand being raised that Chandra would like to ask a follow-up question to Vivian. If that's the case, Chandra, please go ahead.
Yes, just a quick follow-up. Do you think that putting all of Europe as a red zone means discrimination?
Well, there we're in a situation where it's each member state that is setting its own specific requirements and criteria regarding the measures that they are implementing for incoming travelers at borders. In order to do so, most of our member states are using the latest information on the epidemiological situation in the countries of origin, and in most cases they organize countries in risk groups and use this information to decide on measures to be implemented. And as it comes to the Commission approach, what we aim to do from our side is to make sure that member states do exchange information about it, keep each other informed, and through that carry out a bigger coordination when it comes to these limitations. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vivian. At this stage, I will invite you to signal your interest by raising your hand if you wish to ask additional questions to Vivian on the coronavirus response or on the health-related aspects in particular. And there, I understand that Sarah would want to ask a question on this matter to Vivian. If that's the case, Sarah, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Some questions about the COVAX announcement today. I have several, but I just wanted to first clear up a really fundamental point. Is the Commission and Europe's participation meant to involve actually procuring vaccines through the COVAX facility?
Thank you for the question, Sarah. Vivian?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. For the moment, what we have expressed today is our political commitment to support and participate in the work of COVAX. This is what we've announced today.
Thank you for that clarification. I will now invite again to signal your interest in asking questions to Vivian on coronavirus and health-related aspects. I see that Francesco has the hand raised. So, Francesco, the floor is yours. And I understand, Francesco, that you need to activate your microphone. It is not working. Yes, there you are.
Yeah, sorry. It's a follow-up to the question just asked by my colleague. Because you had a recommendation, you were you were clearly telling member states not to buy vaccines through COVAX and through any other scheme that is different from the one that you have in place to procure vaccines. So given that now you say that you are joining COVAX, is that recommendation dropped or is still there? And then secondly, why are you offering guarantees and not just cash to COVAX? Thanks.
what we are doing now today, what we announced is our intention to join, the Commission's intention to join the COVAX, and we also announced this 400 million contribution for working together in purchasing future vaccines to the benefit of low and middle income countries. This is the sum of what we announced today. When it comes to further details and rules of engagements of COVAX, these are still under discussion, and the EU and with the member states to make sure that we come to a final shaping of our position on this.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I will now invite you again to indicate by raising your hand if you wish to ask any question to Vivian on coronavirus health-related aspects. And I see that Sarah still has the hand raised, which makes me understand she has a follow-up question.
Yes, thank you. I still actually just don't feel that the first question has been answered. The main point of COVAX is to jointly purchase vaccines. So when you say that you're participating, would I be reporting accurately if I said that the Commission is leaving the door open to purchasing vaccines through COVAX, or would that be incorrect? Please help me convey the Commission's participation accurately to readers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and fully understand the position we're in. We will come back to you with a specifically detailed and correct answer, which I will check with my colleagues on that. But when we look at what we've announced today is indeed, as you just said, our intention to join this facility, as well as our contribution of 400 million euros to COVAX for working together in purchasing future vaccines to low and medium income countries.
400 million in guarantees. But I think that, as Vivian said, the important thing to note is that the terms and the conditions of our participation in COVAX is subject to discussions, but what is not under discussion is our intention and clear commitment to support the work of COVAX and to take part in it. Are there any additional questions for Vivian? On health-related aspects, before we go to the free movement related matters, which Isabel's question has raised earlier on. So I understand that Anna has a question for Vivian. Anna, the floor is yours.
Oui, bonjour. Donc, moi, je voudrais revenir au contrat que la Commission est en train de négocier pour la production du vaccin contre le Covid-19. Donc, en fait, je voudrais savoir s'il y a des clauses pour exonérer ces compagnies de ces responsabilités civiles en cas où il y aurait des problèmes dans le futur.
Vivian.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question. Nous sommes effectivement en train de négocier avec plusieurs compagnies qui créent des vaccins pour faire sorte que les Européens, autant que les autres pays dans le monde, aient des vaccins qui soient sûrs et utilisables aussi vite que possible. Dans ce travail, et on vous a tenu bien informé de ça depuis ces dernières semaines, nous avançons avec pas par pas, c'est-à-dire nous avons deux lignes de travail. D'abord, nous discutons avec les compagnies dans les termes généraux et nous vous avons tenu informés sur ces discussions. Nous avons aussi déjà signé un contrat, c'est-à-dire avec AstraZeneca, concernant la possibilité d'acheter des vaccins en futur. C'est ce qui concerne les questions de quelles sont les restrictions pour les compagnies, etc. Nous avons nous parlons des situations avec un risque assez haut, c'est-à-dire c'est un autre intérêt d'avoir ces vaccins aussi vite que possible. C'est pour ça que nous avons mis aussi dans ces contrats certaines possibilités pour indemnifier les les producteurs de vaccins dans le cas de certaines responsabilités. Donc, nous... c'est ce que ça veut dire correctement, et je suis désolée puisque je suis en train de traduire ici d'anglais, comme vous pouvez le comprendre. Nous sommes dans la position où notre intérêt primaire, c'est de protéger nos citoyens. Pour ça, c'est ce que nous avons mis en place, c'est que les pays membres doivent faire des contrôles stricts sur la sécurité de ces vaccins, une fois quand on y est, que les citoyens doivent avoir tous leurs droits qui sont normaux dans le domaine de pharmaceutique toujours respectés, et aussi que les pays membres peuvent être prêts à couvrir financièrement certains risques que ces compagnies ont posés, exactement pour faire sorte que nous avons ce vaccin. Puisque je voudrais souligner encore une fois que tout notre travail que nous menons ici cet été concernant les négociations avec les compagnies, le but principal, c'est d'achever dans une situation que nous avons ce vaccin aussi vite que possible et aussi sécurisé que possible pour nos citoyens. Merci.
Merci beaucoup Viviane aussi pour faire la traduction instantanée des informations que tu as dans d'autres langues. Et je vous invite maintenant à poser d'autres questions à Viviane au sujet des vaccins, si vous en avez des questions autour de ce sujet. Et je vois que la main de Francesco est levée. Donc Francesco, la parole est à toi.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Sorry for a follow-up about just the first question about whether you are giving guarantees and not cash has remained unanswered. So it would be interesting if you can clarify that. And then secondly, it seems to me an inconsistency, the fact that you are saying that you want an equitable access to vaccines for all countries in the world, and then at the same time you are buying vaccines for the European population legitimately, so that they access vaccines first. And you are also telling member states of the European Union not to join, not to buy vaccines to COVAX. So effectively, it seems that you are giving priority to the European citizens over the rest of the world. So can you explain how can you clarify whether this is an inconsistency? It's just my way of reading it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I indeed tried to clarify this. So basically, we're in a situation where we are negotiating with the different pharmaceutical companies to make sure that they'd be able to provide these vaccines to us as soon as possible. When you look back to our various press communications on this topic, then you will see that we always underline that what we're talking about is providing the vaccines to the European citizens, but also giving us the opportunity to redirect or contribute the vaccines to low and medium income countries, as well as to our certain European partners. So in our negotiations, the importance of making sure that the vaccines arrive to everywhere where they are the most needed is one of our key goals. So this is something which I'd really like to underline here. And when you look back to our communications from end of July and from August, we always make a point, and we make the point because this is actually what we discuss and what we agree with these companies. So that's something very important to underline, that part of our global response to coronavirus is also to make sure that we are able to redirect the vaccines to the low and medium income countries. When it comes to the 400 million that we announced today as in guarantees to support COVAX, there I would just refer you to the press release that we've put out today, which gives all the details about it, which explains indeed that it's part of our European joint engagement, which we do together with the Commission, with the Member States, and with our European financial institutions, such as the European Investment Bank. And the aim is to mobilize resources for the coronavirus global response. And for that matter, as the Commission, we promised today to mobilize 400 million euros in guarantees to support COVAX and its underlying objectives as part of our effort as Team Europe. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, Vivian. Our contributions and our support can take various forms. The form that will be available in this specific situation to support the COVAX facility will be that of guarantees, and this is what is available and announced at this stage. I will now invite you to raise your hand if you have additional questions for Vivian on vaccine-related issues. That doesn't seem to be the case, except for Mose, who has a question for you. So he just...
No, thank you, Dana. No, I was a bit quick. No, in fact, I have another question, not for Vivian. So, but I think that's my turn. I'll pass for that question.
Thank you. So then I would just invite you to wait a little bit, because Isabel has been waiting patiently until we finish with the health-related aspects of the coronavirus before I can invite Christian to provide an answer on issues linked to freedom of movement. So, Christian, I hope you are connected and you can provide an answer to Isabel. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we see you, we hear you.
Good. Well, okay, so as colleagues have already mentioned, any restrictions to free movement within the EU should only be used where strictly necessary, be coordinated, proportionate, and non-discriminatory to address public health risks. As regards the initiative for more coordination that you were mentioning, Isabel, I can tell you what the Commission has been doing. Based on the discussion with Member States, the Commission already on 7 August sent a letter to Member States outlining principles that are relevant for such restrictions. On this basis, and because also of Member States' positive feedback to this letter, the Commission has very recently stepped up work on coordination and put together a discussion paper which proposes to increase coordination on 3 points. The first point is on common criteria to determine the epidemiological risks. Second point is a common color coding system on risk areas. And the third point is a common approach on measures when returning from travel to higher risk areas like testing and quarantine. And this paper has been discussed with Member States at technical level in the COVID-19 Home Affairs Group on Friday for the first time.
Thank you, Christian. I understand that Isabelle has a follow-up question. So, Isabelle, une question de suivi, si c'est le cas. La parole est à toi. Isabelle, est-ce que tu es connectée? Est-ce que tu peux appuyer sur le bouton Speak?
Voilà.
Oui.
Vous m'entendez là?
Oui. On t'a entendu brièvement, on t'a même vu, mais là, tu es disparu. Donc...
voilà, ça y est. Là, c'est bon?
C'est bon, tu es de retour. Vas-y.
D'accord. Oui, je voulais juste être sûre que je suis pas sûre que j'ai tout bien compris en fait, parce que j'ai pas le son était pas très bon. Mais ce sur quoi insiste le ministre français qui évoquait ce sujet, c'est notamment le fait qu'il faudrait des critères communs pour les seuils, pour quelles mesures on déclenche quand on atteint un seuil autour de cas par 100 000 habitants, quels sont les critères pertinents, etc. Et donc, ce que je voudrais comprendre, Christian, c'est si le travail, dans ce que tu as dit, le travail là-dessus est déjà en cours ou pas?
Christian, est-ce que tu es encore là?
Le travail de cela est déjà en cours. On a eu une première discussion la semaine dernière, le vendredi, comme je viens de dire. Et ça inclut ces 3 points que j'ai mentionnés. Alors, d'avoir plus de coordination, c'est quelque chose que la Commission a travaillé déjà beaucoup et on va continuer à faire ça avec les États membres.
Merci beaucoup, Christian. Je vous invite désormais à poser d'autres questions à Christian sur des aspects liés à la libre circulation ou à d'autres sujets que Christian couvre. Donc, gardez votre main levée dans les systèmes si vous avez des questions à ce sujet pour Christian. Well, then I understand that Mose's question is for Christian. So, Mose, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Thank you, Dana. Yes, indeed. I think it's for Christian because it has to do with questions about freedom of expression and hate speech. And it's related to the previous question that was asked by another journalist, and that is about the incident which took place in Sweden on Friday last week in Malmö, when far-right people kicked around the Quran, holy book, and also burned it in a square in Malmö. And it was not stopped by the police who was present there. And later on that evening into the night to Saturday, there were riots in Malmö as a result of this. So my question is, and obviously in Sweden it seems that it's okay, it's legally allowed to burn books, even holy books, as it was done in the Middle Ages or in Nazi Germany, who burned all kinds of books they didn't like. So I would like to ask if there is an EU directive or law against that, about that, let's say, interpretation of freedom of expression, that you can burn books to express your hate against other people. Thank you.
Christian, indeed. I hope he's still on the line. Yes.
Yes. Hello, Mose. What I can say on this, let me first be very clear that the Commission condemns all forms and manifestations of racism, xenophobia, and related intolerance. They are incompatible with the values on which the European Union is founded. You might be aware that we have a framework decision on combating racism and xenophobia, which, for instance, obliges member states to penalize public incitement to violence or hatred related to race, color, religion, descent, or national or ethnic origin. So we have indeed legal instruments in place as regards the specific incident. We understand that there is actually an investigation at the national level ongoing, and so I wouldn't be in a position to comment on an ongoing investigation on the concrete case.
Very much, Christian. I will now invite to signal your intention to ask additional questions to Christian on this subject, if you have any. I understand that Nawab indeed has a question for Christian on this. Now, Nawab, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Relating to the earlier question about Sweden, I would like to ask if the Commission is in touch with the Swedish government about this issue. Thank you.
Christian.
Hi. I'm currently not aware of any specific context regarding this matter, but as I said, our position on manifestations of racism, xenophobia, and related intolerance, also related to religion, is very clear. At the same time, as is always the case for concrete cases, allowing banning demonstrations and also looking into possible wrongdoing, this is of course a matter for the national authorities under the control of independent courts.
Thank you, Christian. I will now invite colleagues to ask additional questions to Christian on this matter or on other matters that he covers. No, I don't see any hand raised. So we open the floor to other questions, and I see that Verena wishes to ask a question. Verena, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Maybe I can also get view my picture here. Actually, it is for Christian, and I was a little bit slow to get back to the coordination effort on the travel restrictions. Maybe you could give us a timeline, how fast this work might progress. And I understand you correctly that the German Franco initiative would not be necessary at this point because you're already on the case. Thank you.
Christian, the floor is yours.
Okay, look, on your last point, I wouldn't say that. I think all coordination efforts are of course welcome. The point I made is that we are indeed working on this for some time now with the member states intensively. There was a first discussion at technical level on Friday. There will be further discussions in other configurations. But I'm afraid I don't have a concrete timeline right now because, of course, this also depends. Member states have, for the first time, also only looked into this on Friday, so it will also depend, of course, on the feedback that we receive by member states. The next steps will depend on that.
Christian, so I will invite you again if you have any additional questions for Christian as he is connected. At this stage, I do not see any question for Christian, so thank you, Christian. And we open the floor to other subjects, and I see that Ivan from the Montenegro TV wishes to ask a question. Ivan, go ahead. I understand that you need to do something about your mic source, to open your mic. Let's see if it works. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Try again, perhaps, to connect and open your mic source. No, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. So until Ivan is sorting out the audio problem, I will give the floor to Tommaso.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. I think it's for Marta, if she's there. Actually, there are two questions regarding the recovery fund. I've read on the Italian press that the Italian government is working to get the 10% of pre-financing, which I read that they can get already at the beginning of the 2021 of the next year. I just wonder if you can recall us which are the conditions which would allow the Italian government to access this 10% of pre-financing. That would be roughly 20 billion euros. And the second question is, if I recall well, you have created a task force to help member states to write the recovery and resilience plans, which are necessary to access the RRF. I just wonder if this task force is already working with the Italian government, because I've read that the Italian government is working on roughly 500 small projects, which are, it's maybe they need some help to get a strategy and to focus on some priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. Marta should be connected. And yes, she is.
Yes, thank you, Dana, and thank you, Tommaso, for your question. So indeed, your question referred to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is one of the instruments, if not the main instrument of the recovery plan. So on the pre-financing aspect, what I can say at this stage is that in line with the conclusions of the European Council, a pre-financing of 10% of the financial contribution to each member state could be paid upon the approval of the Recovery and Resilience Plan and adoption of the legal legal commitment by the Commission, provided that all the conditions, of course, are met and that all legal steps are completed by then. So indeed, the key here is the Recovery and Resilience Plan, which you mentioned that member states should provide to the Commission. And in terms of timeline, what we're looking at is informal submissions of the plan as of 15th of October, but obviously the formal submissions of plan can only take place once the legal basis has been approved, which is hopefully at the beginning of next year. And indeed, the Commission is organizing itself internally in order to be able to start a discussion with the member states as soon as possible. I would have to check with those services if formal contacts or informal contacts have already begun on the Italian recovery plan. I will come back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. In the meantime, this gave ideas to David, who wishes to ask a question, I suppose, on the same topic for you. So if that's the case, David, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a clarification on the 10% of pre-financing. Is that amount based on all the funds available for member states, or just grants and not loans? Thank you.
Marta.
Thank you, David. At this stage, unfortunately, I cannot give you any more specific details than what I said. The 10% is the financial contribution of each member state, but obviously, as you are aware, discussions are ongoing with the Council and the European Parliament in order to put into the legal basis the specificities of this facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Marta, if you are still interested at this stage. No, I don't see any such questions for Marta. So, except, yes, for Mathieu. Mathieu, you raised your hand. Is this a question for Marta? If this is the case, please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour. Je voulais savoir s'il y avait du nouveau sur l'instrument sûr. On attendait des nouvelles sur la Hongrie, notamment la semaine dernière, mais depuis, on n'a rien eu. Et sur un autre sujet, la BCE, est-ce que la Commission a finalisé son analyse juridique de l'arrêt de la Cour de Karlsruhe? Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Marta, sur le premier sujet, sure, s'il te plaît.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Mathieu, pour l'instant, nous n'avons pas de nouvelle annonce à faire sur l'instrument SURE. Comme tu l'as effectivement indiqué, la demande de financement de la Hongrie est toujours en cours d'analyse. Nous sommes en contact avec les autorités pour clarifier certaines des mesures qui ont été proposées par la Hongrie. Mais donc, nous espérons soumettre une proposition au Conseil dans les plus brefs délais. Donc, dès qu'on a la communiquera sa position, nous la communiquerons bien entendu dans notre Daily News. Merci. Et effectivement, la deuxième question sur Karlsruhe sera plutôt pour Christian.
Effectivement, mais je peux d'ores et déjà dire que à ce sujet, notre analyse est en cours. Je me demande si Christian il a d'autres questions, d'autres précisions à apporter. Christian, y a-t-il d'autres précisions à apporter?
Non, j'ai rien à ajouter à ce stade.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais bien revenir vers Yvan qui avait encore une question pour nous aujourd'hui. Je comprends que son microphone ne fonctionne toujours pas. Donc, il nous a posé la question dans le chat. So, I will read it out. So, this is a question from Ivan. I quote.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez maintenant?
But yes, you are there with sound and video. So I give you the floor to ask the question yourself.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's a question for Anna. Yesterday in Montenegro were held the parliamentary elections on the basis of still unofficial and preliminary results. The opposition parties have the majority in new parliament. So do you have any comments on the result and the election campaign in Montenegro at this point? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivan. It will be Peter who will provide you an answer.
Hi, Ivan. We don't have any comment at this point. As you know, the usual practice is to wait for the preliminary findings of the OEC, Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, ODIHR. And after that, we will issue our position and our statement on the elections in Montenegro. Montenegro is an important partner country in the accession process, so we were following very closely, and everything we want to say about the process and the results and the way forward will be stated in our statement, for which the basis will be the preliminary finding by the ODIHR.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't see any other questions or any other hands raised in the system to ask us questions, but Giovanni has been asking a question in our chat, which is about when we are planning to go back to physical midday briefings, if we are going to go back to such meetings, physical meetings soon, or we will continue for the time being with the virtual version. Thank you very much for this question, Giovanni, which I think is on many colleagues' heads at this point. So first of all, we would very much look forward to reopening the press room, to welcome you here and to have interactions with you differently than just through this system, which for the moment serves us well, and I thank the colleagues who operate it. But still, it would be extremely good to go back to the physical presence of journalists in the Parliament. However, we depend, as we have said in a number of occasions, on the situations in the host country, in Belgium, because we are coordinating the measures regarding access to buildings and presence in the office of colleagues. We are coordinating those actions and we're adapting them to the situation and to the measures adopted in the host country. We have had the opportunity to say before the summer that according to current planning and depending on the conditions in Belgium, we could move towards a larger presence of colleagues in Commission buildings, a larger presence at work. And if the situation allows it in that phase, we would also consider reopening the press room to journalists, of course, under certain conditions. And this is what we are working on at this moment. We are working on ensuring the right conditions to welcome you here in full safety, or as safely as we can. But we have no specific announcement to make about a date. But we are working on it because we would want, as much as you would, to have you in the press room. Right, that being said, I'd like to thank you for today's midday briefing and for the exchanges that we had, and to invite you to remain connected for the technical briefing, which will start right now. Thank you very much.